All right. And let me fix that. Jeff has a damn good channel. I, s- I emphasize that because I really enjoy his channel. He has a lot of like historical content, interviews with people who are giving context of history and everything else. Chinese Revolution. What is the author's name? I can't get the author's name. It's a really good channel. It's a really good channel. There are a few people who I say that about. DD Geopolitics is one. The Cradle is another one that are really good in regards to putting out news stories. Each have their benefits that help inform my opinion, or at the very least give the basis of a conversation or the basis of something to look up. But Jeff's channel is just entertaining, and he's damn good at it. At least it's my taste. But I like stuff like that. The Great War, World War II on YouTube, that goes day by day by day into the war thing. Oh, that is so fantastic. Carl Jha, his channel, where he goes these moments of Chinese history. Not to mention Carl Jha's just funny in general. No, these people, I deeply appreciate them, and I thank them for their work. All right, we have 15 minutes. Alex Craner is going to join us at 8:30. I went along with Jeff, and so I'm going to have to blitz through this. Donald Trump gave a press conference, and I am astonished with the level of mendacity, but also beyond the mendacity, what you learn from Trump in this press conference. It's not what he says. It is what he says, but it's not what he says. And then, God, weird language is weird. It's not the context of what he's talking about, or it's not the content of what he's talking about. It's the context. It's why he's saying it. It's almost like the meta narrative that's taking place, which gives you some kind of idea in regards to what is in his mind. And that is the thing that I am fascinated about in this moment. I'm going to play a few of these clips, and I'm going to give quick commentary, and I will cut this as an independent video. But let's go to the first clip. This is Donald Trump effectively saying, look, I'm going to try to get a deal. If I can't get a deal, I'm going to talk to the Europeans. I'm going to talk to Zelensky. But I can walk if I can't get what I want.
Is coming to our country as opposed to us going to his country or even a third party place. But I think we'll have constructive conversations. Then after that meeting, immediately, maybe as I'm flying out, maybe as I'm leaving the room, I'll be calling the European leaders who I get along with very well. And, I have a great relationship, I think, with all of them. And I get along with Zelensky, but, I disagree with what he's done. Very, very severely disagree. This is a war that should have never happened, wouldn't have happened. But I'll be speaking to Zelensky. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap, because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven. And there'll be some swapping. There'll be some changes in land. And the word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine. But they've taken some very prime territory. They've taken largely ocean, in real estate, we call it oceanfront property. That's always.
All right. In this clip, Donald Trump is effectively going with this idea of, hey, I'm going to have a conversation with Zelensky. I'm going to have a conversation with everybody. And we are going to try to make some kind of deal. We're going to have land swaps. My question will be, has that been talked about in advance? Has been talked about in advance? Has that been something that when Witkoff went over into Moscow in order to kind of make the deal, to come to some kind of agreement in regards to having conversation, was the context set in advance, where Donald Trump on some level made an offer in regards to, okay, this is what we can do to end it. And Putin was like, okay, this is a basis for us to have a conversation. Or Is this something they just came up with? Like I pointed out, Ushakov's statement wasn't entirely clear. It wasn't clear if he meant, well, they agreed upon the context by which to sit down, or if it was they made an offer to potentially end the conflict, or in ways that they can have a conversation about, at the very least, ending this event right now. I don't know which. Donald Trump keeps saying land swaps. He pointed out, I spoke to the Russian side. I spoke to the Ukrainian side. Okay, if you spoke to the Russian side, did the Russian side on some level agree to something that you can have this conversation on in order to try to come up with something that's livable for the Russian side? Zelensky is a different animal. Zelensky is a different animal. Now, I think it is farcical, this belief, when Zelensky comes out and says, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, that he's going to balk, that he's not going to accept it. Like, you immediately get Zelensky coming up saying he's not going to accept the terms of any deal. He's not going to leave the Donbass. I don't know if he knows this, but he is going to leave the Donbass, either willingly with his troops picking up their gear and walking out, or with one corpse after the next, dragging their wounded. It is one or the other. Obviously, Donbass is in a position of a collapse as we speak right now. He's not going to get an option. So if Trump knows that, and you can imagine that it's not necessarily something he wants to happen on his watch, that is the context to this conversation. That is the context of him trying to get Putin to have a conversation, to at the very least bring this level of the hostilities down. It doesn't mean that the entirety of America's strategic plan of taking over the world, that's still there. But obviously, if you're the president of the United States, you want this notion of primacy. You also have this capability of cutting bait when it's not working on your behalf. These talks are because of that. When he is saying, I'm talking to all of these people, they're obviously aware of what is taking place on the ground and the disaster of what's taking place on the ground. I want to go to this other part that, again, well, let me go to 152.16 first. 152.16. All right. If I got this right, this is Trump talking about he could potentially walk. Now, he did say that in the course of this conversation. I'll start here. He did say that over the course of this conversation, and that is entirely aimed at the Europeans and Zelensky. It does not hurt the Russians one iota if he walks. And not just not hurt, they would prefer that he just walk. Cutting bait. I'm sick of this. I'm tired of this. I'm done. I'm out. You guys are horrible people. My name is Donald Trump. I'm leaving. Come to my golf course. That's what they would prefer. But up to this point, that has not necessarily been what has taken place, because Donald Trump, regardless of what he says, doesn't want people screaming at him that he is the reason that Ukraine lost. He is the reason. He gave up the ghost. He abandoned Ukraine. He was the reason that the war was lost. Now, obviously, that's nonsense. By the same token, Donald Trump, with a fickle ego, doesn't necessarily want that thrown his direction. This is what he says at this mark in the interview.
Other than one small area, Odessa, it's a small area. There's just a little bit of water left. So I'm going to go and see the parameters. Now, I may leave and say, good luck, and that'll be the end. I may say this is not going to be settled. I mean, there are those that believe that Putin wanted all of Ukraine. I happen to be one of them, by the way. I think if it weren't for me, he would not be even talking to anybody else right now.
Now, I could leave. You guys are horrible people. A deal can't be made. I don't think Putin would even be talking to anybody else because I'm Donald Trump and I'm fantastic. Look at my tie. But if this doesn't work, I can just call it a day. I can call it quits. I can just walk. That is not aimed at the Russians. I'm trying to make the point clear. For all of this talk about Europeans and Zelensky doing everything in their power to sabotage it, who do you think he is talking to when he is saying, I can walk? Russia doesn't care. Zelensky and Europe cares because they can't carry the burden on their own. That is a threat that is being leveled at the Europeans and a threat that is being leveled at Zelensky. If you push me, if you're not willing to make a deal, whatever that deal is, that I agree with the Russians, I will walk. I will walk. You can carry and hold this bag on your own. Whatever deal you come up with, have at it. You can continue to fight each other. You can continue to shoot each other in the face. I'm out. And considering it's the Russians that are on the move, moved 10 kilometers, with the notion that the collapse is effectively taking place as we speak, that does not bode well for the Europeans, nor does it bode well for the Ukrainian military or Ukraine as a political entity itself. That is Trump leveling a threat at the Europeans and at Zelensky. The other one, and maybe this will be the last one before what's his name comes on. I gave him javelins, 153. This one is fascinating to me for a larger context that I haven't really heard anybody talk about up to this point. Regardless of what Trump says, and regardless of the way Trump presents himself, he is deeply insecure. Now, part of that insecurity came because years were spent creating this psychological operation of Russiagate. In one of my other videos, I pointed out that Russiagate being, let's say, undercut by Tulsi Gabbard, gave him political room in order to move in a particular direction, especially on this one, in order to try to make a deal. The Democratic Party effectively ceded this idea that the Russians put Trump in office as if he was some Manchurian candidate. So any and everything that he did effectively was looked at through that lens of, well, he's obviously doing that to help the Russians. He's obviously doing that to help the Russians. He's sensitive to that. Even if he doesn't necessarily want to admit that he is sensitive to it, he brings it up too much to not be. At this point, he is trying to justify the negotiations with Russia. He's trying to justify it. You don't need to justify ending the war, but he feels needs to because of everything that was effectively seeded into the public consciousness on this issue. And so when he is making this argument, well, I gave him javelins, that is him effectively saying, look, I am not a weakling on Russia. I'm not being had. I'm not being taken advantage of. Putin is not my master. He's not my daddy. I was able to do this. I was willing to do this. I was fighting the Russians every bit as much as everybody else. So when I'm making this deal, I'm not making the deal because I'm weak. I'm making the deal because I'm trying to end the war. And you can prove that because I gave him javelins. It's an interesting psychological dynamic that's taking place. It's not the content of what he's saying. It's the meta around the content of what he's saying that I find it interesting.
By far the largest. They have tremendous potential in Russia to do well. They're not doing well. Their economy is not doing well right now because it's been very well disturbed by this. It doesn't help when the president of the United States tells their largest or second largest oil buyer that we're putting a 50% tariff on you if you buy oil from Russia. That was a big blow. And then they say, gee, he wasn't so tough. Nobody else would have done that. And I haven't stopped there. I mean, look, I was all set to do things far bigger than that, but I got a call that they'd like to meet, and I'm going to see what they want to meet about. I'd like to see a ceasefire. I'd like to see the best deal that could be made for both parties. You know, it takes two to tango, right? So ultimately, I'll have a meeting next week. I had a great relationship with him, considering the fact that, I was not nice to him because of the pipeline. I ended the pipeline. I also gave the javelins. Do you ever hear of a javelin? Javelin is called a tank buster. They say that Obama gave them sheets and I gave them javelins. If it weren't for me, all those tanks that were destroyed at the first days of the war, because the tanks got stuck in the mud, some commander made a better. They would have been in Kiev in 4 hours going down the highway. But a Russian general made a brilliant decision to go through the farmland instead. And they just had torrential rains, and the rains were so bad, and it was mud, and those tanks got stuck in the mud. I don't know who that general is, but knowing Vladimir, he's probably not around any longer because all those tanks were stuck in the mud, and they went along with the javelins. I gave them the javelins. You know that, right? I gave them javelins. They gave them sheets. But I'm going to meet with President Putin, and we're going to see what he has in mind. And if it's a fair deal, I'll reveal it to the European Union leaders and to the NATO leaders, and also to President Zelensky. I think out of respect, I'll call him first, uh, and then I'll call them after. And I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting, or I may say we can make a deal.
Right there. Right there. It's a fascinating psychological thing, right? For one, Russia is not suffering in this way. They have like the third or fourth largest economy. I think they're behind the United States, China, India, something like that. I'm not India. I'm sorry. I think it's China, the United States, and maybe one more that's ahead of them. But they're either 4 or 5, 3, 4, 5. I forget which one. So no, that's not true. Second, claiming that you're going to put sanctions on China and India. Well, for one, you didn't put sanctions on China. You planted for another 3 months. There's that. I can show you the video of that and say it's complicated. On the other side with India, yeah, you went after India, but you only went after like 20% of whatever they give to the United States. You went after them because you thought they were the weak link. India did not stop trading with Russia, and they continue to trade with Russia to this day. Neither did Brazil, meaning you were going after BRICS nations, and they continued circling the wagons. So there's that. Mendaciousness aside, it's a fascinating point. I gave them javelins. I gave them this. The Russians were stopped. It took them 4 hours. I was hard on Putin, even though we had a great relationship, but I was hard on him. I wasn't easy on him at all. They said Donald Trump was easy on Putin. I wasn't easy on Putin. Why are you telling us this? Right? Nobody asked you this. This wasn't a question that came from the media. Nobody said, hey, Donald Trump, are you being too easy? Nobody asked you that. All of this is stuff in his mind, and stuff that in his mind, similar to me, to be honest, things that are on my mind comes out. He is worse. Maybe because he's getting older. Maybe when I'm in my 70s, if I get to my 70s, I'm going to be in the same way. Just random stuff comes out. I have to clear the queue. When stuff comes out with my ex, it comes out. If something else is going on, it comes out. I'm pointing out that nobody asked him this. All of this is in his mind. And what is in his mind is, I was not weak. I am not being weak. This is not me being weak that I'm making or having negotiations with Vladimir Putin. And the reality of it is, it's not you as an individual being weak. It's the military position that you're confronted with. That is weakness. But that's not the way it's being translated. It's being translated as if it's a personal, individual thing that Donald Trump is somehow working with the Russians in the context of these negotiations that he doesn't necessarily want to get hit with. Donald Trump is weak. Donald Trump gave up the ghost. Donald Trump abandoned Ukraine. This is him insulating himself before going into the meeting. It's fascinating. And of course, when you get to the very end, the threat that's aimed at Europe, I'm going to go in. If Putin gives me a great deal, whatever that particular deal is, and I think it's fair, and I think it's something that's going to work, again, work in the context of not allowing a full collapse on the battlefield. That's the context. If I think it's fair, I'm going to talk to Zelensky. I'm going to talk to the Europeans. And if we can't come to an agreement, I'm out. Keep killing yourselves. You're miserable people. I'm leaving. A, insulates himself. B, levels the threat at Europe and Zelensky. I know you all are talking about sabotage. I hear you. Don't mess with me. If I get a deal that I think is good, I'm going to end this war. And if you stop me from ending this war, you're going to be left to your own devices in a situation that you know you cannot deal with and you know you can't handle. I'm Trump. Go to my golf course. Let me go to my guests.